Close your eyes and imagine everything, every star, every planet, every heartbeat, once fitting into a space smaller than a grain of sand. From that silent spark, time itself began, and so did the story of you. Before there was time, before there was space, before there was even the whisper of existence, there was nothing, not the kind of nothing we imagine when a room is empty or a light is turned off. This was true nothingness. No darkness, no silence, because those things still require space to exist in. There was only a boundless potential, a stillness beyond imagination, waiting for the first breath of creation. And then, without warning, something changed. In an instant, everything began. The universe was born not with a sound, not with an explosion as we might picture it, but with expansion, sudden, immense, unstoppable. From a single point smaller than a grain of sand, energy burst outward in all directions. This was the Big Bang, the beginning of everything that has ever been and ever will be. In that moment, space itself began to stretch and time began to tick its first seconds. The fabric of reality unfolded like a vast invisible ocean swelling outward, carrying the seeds of all future stars and galaxies within it. For a brief moment, the universe was pure energy, unimaginably hot, trillions of degrees, a storm of light and force. There were no atoms yet, no particles that could hold together. Everything was a swirling soup of raw potential. But even in that chaos, the laws of physics were quietly taking shape, as if the cosmos were laying down the rules it would follow for eternity. Gravity, electromagnetism, and the nuclear forces all came into being, invisible threads weaving the first pattern of reality. As the universe expanded, it began to cool. The raging fire of its birth softened slightly, and within the first fractions of a second, energy condensed into matter. The first particles blinked into existence, quarks and electrons fleeting and fragile. They collided, fused, and separated again in a furious dance of creation. For the first time, something existed. From pure energy came the first building blocks of matter. The universe was no longer just light. It had substance. Seconds passed, and already the cosmos had grown vast beyond comprehension. Quarks joined together to form protons and neutrons, the cores of future atoms. But the heat was still too intense for them to settle into anything stable. The young universe roared and shimmered like a cosmic furnace, each particle flickering in and out of existence, bound only briefly before being torn apart again by the relentless energy around it. Minutes passed and something extraordinary began. The universe continued to expand and cool, and for the first time protons and neutrons found each other and held on. They fused together to form the simplest atomic nuclei, hydrogen and helium. In these first moments of cosmic chemistry, the elements that would one day make up stars, planets, oceans, and life itself were born. About 75% hydrogen, 25% helium, and trace amounts of lithium. A quiet beginning for a universe that would grow to unimaginable complexity. As the minutes turned to hours, the universe was still a storm of radiation. Light could not travel freely. It was trapped, scattering endlessly among particles. The cosmos was bright, but no one could have seen it, for vision itself did not yet exist. Every point of space glowed with energy, dense and hot like the heart of a newborn star. Yet slowly, ever so slowly, the light began to fade into order. The expansion continued, space stretched, and the heat diminished. Hundreds of thousands of years passed. To the universe, it was only the beginning of its long story. The temperature had fallen enough that electrons could finally settle into orbits around atomic nuclei. The first true atoms were born, hydrogen and helium filling the growing void. The light that had been trapped for so long was finally free to travel across space. This was the moment the universe became transparent, the moment light began its eternal journey. That ancient light still travels today. We can see it as a faint glow in every direction, the cosmic microwave background, a whisper from the universe's first breath. With that, the universe entered a quiet darkness. The blinding brilliance of its birth faded, leaving behind a deep, endless night. For millions of years, the universe was dark and calm, filled with invisible hydrogen gas drifting through the void. Gravity, patient and persistent, began its slow, delicate work. Tiny variations in density, ripples in the fabric of space, pulled matter together little by little. What had begun as chaos now began to take shape. In these silent stretches of time, clumps of gas grew denser, drawn together by gravity's gentle hand. The first stars were waiting to be born. Inside these growing clouds, atoms collided again and again, pressing closer under their own weight. The temperature rose once more, but this time it was different. The heat was not the chaos of the Big Bang, but the focused, living fire of creation returning. In the heart of these clouds, nuclear fusion began, and the first stars ignited. Their light pierced the cosmic darkness for the first time since the beginning. Tiny points of brilliance scattered across the vastness, each one a furnace where hydrogen was transformed into helium, and in the process, light was released. The night of the cosmos was over. The first dawn had arrived. The universe took its first breath of starlight. These first stars were giants, massive, short-lived, and unimaginably bright. They burned through their fuel in just a few million years, a blink of an eye in cosmic terms. When they reached the end of their lives, they exploded in colossal supernovae, scattering their innermost elements across the cosmos. From their deaths came new materials, carbon, oxygen, iron, the ingredients of planets and life. The universe was recycling itself, building new complexity from its own ashes. Each generation of stars carried forward the legacy of the Big Bang, transforming simple hydrogen and helium into richer elements. Gravity continued to weave matter together into great cosmic structures. Stars gathered into clusters. Clusters merged into galaxies, and galaxies formed vast filaments stretching across space like the threads of a cosmic web. What had once been chaos was now organized beauty, a grand architecture shaped by invisible forces. Amid this growing complexity, one small galaxy began to take shape. Not special at first, just one of billions. Within its spiral arms, stars were born and died, scattering dust and light. Around one of its second-generation stars, a small planet would one day form. But that was still far in the future. For now, the universe was still young, still learning to breathe, still expanding outward into endless possibility. The Big Bang was not a single explosion long past. It was the beginning of an ongoing expansion, a living motion that continues even now. Every second, galaxies drift farther apart, carried by the stretching of space itself. The echo of that first moment still hums quietly in the background of reality, in the faint radiation that fills all of space. In every direction we look, we see the afterglow of creation, a reminder that everything began together, in a single shared birth. If you could travel back to those first seconds, you would not find yourself surrounded by stars or planets or light as we know it. You would be within a glowing fog, endless and blinding, expanding faster than anything could move through it. You would feel the weight of energy so intense that even space would seem to shimmer with pressure. It was not the explosion of something into space. It was space itself expanding, creating room for everything that would ever exist. And from that expansion came everything familiar. The stars that fill the night sky, the planets that orbit them, the oceans, the mountains, the trees, and the atoms in your own body. All of it traces back to that first tiny moment of impossible density. Every breath you take contains atoms forged in that ancient fire. You are, in the truest sense, a continuation of the universe's first breath. Imagine now the stillness that followed the chaos when the first stars flickered into existence. Imagine watching them appear one by one, scattered across the darkness like sparks floating upward from an unseen flame. Each star was a sun, blazing with energy, illuminating the vast emptiness that surrounded it. The light from those first stars began its journey across space, some of it still traveling now billions of years later, just reaching our eyes. Every time you look up at the night sky, you are seeing into the past, into the afterglow of that moment when the universe first learned to shine. In the quiet between galaxies, the memory of the Big Bang still lingers. The hydrogen atoms drifting there are ancient, nearly as old as time itself. They hum softly in the cosmic background, waiting perhaps to be pulled into a new star someday. In that sense, the story of creation never truly ended. It only slowed, stretched, and changed form. The Big Bang was not a single act, but the beginning of a song still being played, a melody of energy and matter echoing through eternity. Billions of years after that first expansion, tiny traces of that primordial light still fill the universe. If you tune a radio between stations and hear a faint static hiss, a small fraction of that sound comes from the Big Bang itself, a whisper from the dawn of time. It is astonishing to think that right now the ancient light of creation is all around you, passing through you, connecting you to the birth of the cosmos. As you drift deeper into this thought, imagine the universe not as something distant or foreign, but as something that includes you, something that began so long ago and still moves within you. The atoms in your body were born from those first hydrogen nuclei, refined in the hearts of stars that lived and died long before Earth existed. You are the universe remembering itself, breathing, thinking, wondering. 13.8 billion years have passed since that first moment. The universe has grown vast beyond comprehension, yet the same simple laws still guide its motion. Space still expands, stars are still born, and light still travels outward. The story that began with a whisper of energy continues to unfold. Somewhere, perhaps in another galaxy far from our own, new stars are being born this very second, the direct descendants of that first great expansion. The cosmos is alive and it is still taking its first breath. And though we call it the Big Bang, perhaps it was never truly an explosion but an awakening, the universe opening its eyes for the first time. That moment was the first heartbeat of reality, the spark that began everything we can see, feel, and imagine. Every galaxy, every planet, every living thing, every thought, all of it is woven from the same original fabric, stretched and shaped by the flow of time. When you look up at the stars tonight, you are not gazing outward but backward, back through billions of years of history, back to the moment when time began. Each point of light is a fragment of that ancient fire, a messenger from the dawn of existence. And in that quiet realization, you may feel what the universe felt in its first moments: wonder, motion, and the eternal rhythm of creation. The Big Bang was the beginning of everything, but it was also the beginning of the unknown. Even now we do not fully understand what came before or if before even has meaning. Perhaps there was no before, only potential waiting to unfold. Perhaps the universe is one of many, each with its own beginning, its own laws, its own story. But for us, for now, this is our story. A universe born from nothing, expanding into everything, filled with light and life. And so, as the universe continues to expand in the vast silence of space, it carries within it that first, eternal breath. The same breath that moves through you, through every star, through every atom. From nothing came energy. From energy came light. From light came matter. And from matter came everything that is and everything that will ever be. The universe takes its first breath, and it has never stopped breathing since. Before there was time, before space had even stretched its first dimensions, there was nothing. Not the kind of nothingness we imagine when a room is empty or a light fades to black, for even darkness requires space to exist in. This was a state beyond comprehension, a stillness outside of space, outside of time, where no distance could be measured and no moment could pass, and yet within that nothing there was potential, silent, immeasurable waiting. Then something happened. Something so small, so quick that it escapes all description. The first change. A tremor in the fabric of nothingness. A fluctuation so profound that it became everything. In an instant, energy burst into being, not into space but as space. This was not an explosion in the ordinary sense. There was no place for it to explode into. Instead, reality itself began to expand. The universe was born. In less than a heartbeat, all that would ever exist, every star, every galaxy, every thought, was compressed into a single, blazing point of unimaginable density. And then it began to stretch outward faster than light, unfolding like a vast luminous wave. The Big Bang was not a sound, not a blast of matter, but the swelling of existence itself. Time began its first second, and space opened its first dimension. The universe had taken its first breath. In those first trillionths of a second, the newborn cosmos was a storm of pure energy, chaotic, incandescent, infinitely hot. Matter and energy were one and the same, inseparable, flickering in a state of wild transformation. The laws of nature, the hidden framework of all that would follow, crystallized out of that early fury. Gravity, the gentle shaper of worlds, began to define how things would pull and move. Electromagnetism sparked into being. The nuclear forces, the strong and the weak, settled into their delicate balance, ensuring that atoms could one day exist. This was the moment when the universe wrote its own rules, a set of invisible instructions that would govern stars, galaxies, and even the beating of a human heart billions of years later. The cosmos was not only expanding, it was organizing, structuring itself in silence. As the universe swelled, it cooled. The fierce energy began to relax, its light stretching thinner, softer. Within the first second, particles flickered into existence, quarks, electrons, and neutrinos, appearing out of the storm of energy like sparks from a fire. They collided, fused, and shattered again in a frenzy of creation. For the first time, something existed that could be touched if only there were anyone to touch it. Moments passed, though moments had just begun to mean anything. Quarks gathered into triplets, forming protons and neutrons, the heart of atoms. Yet even these could not yet find peace. The universe was still too hot, too crowded. Everywhere, radiation pressed and scattered, keeping matter in constant motion. But expansion continued, and the temperature kept falling. Slowly, what had once been pure energy began to take shape as matter. Fragile, newborn matter. After a few minutes, just minutes after the dawn of everything, the first atomic nuclei formed. Hydrogen, helium, and a trace of lithium emerged from the glowing fog, born in a cosmic forge that spanned the entire universe. These were simple elements, the barest beginnings, yet they carried within them the potential for all future complexity. They would become the stars, the planets, the oceans, and the living cells that would one day think about their own origins. It is strange and humbling to realize that in these early minutes, the entire chemical foundation of existence was set. The universe, still a child, had already determined its fate. Simplicity first, then endless diversity. For hundreds of thousands of years, light could not travel freely. The cosmos was too dense, filled with charged particles that scattered every photon like mist scattering sunlight. The universe glowed with brilliance, but no one could have seen it. It was light without eyes, beauty without witness. Yet time, patient and eternal, continued its quiet march. The expansion slowed the chaos. The temperature dropped. When the universe was around 380,000 years old, a great change came. Electrons at last found refuge around the nuclei they had long been repelled from. Atoms formed, stable, neutral, enduring. The light that had been trapped for so long was suddenly free to travel. The fog lifted. The universe became transparent. That light still moves through space today. Every direction you look, if your eyes could see beyond visible light, you would find it. A faint, ancient glow, stretched into microwaves by billions of years of expansion. Astronomers call it the cosmic microwave background, but it is more than radiation. It is the afterglow of creation itself, the first visible breath of the cosmos. Then came darkness, the first true night. The brilliance of the Big Bang faded into stillness. The universe, filled with hydrogen and helium gas, was now a vast, dim ocean. No stars yet burned, no galaxies yet spun. The cosmos had gone to sleep, wrapped in silence, waiting for gravity to do its slow, invisible work. In that darkness, gravity whispered. It pulled matter toward itself, gathering tiny ripples of density into larger structures. Hydrogen atoms drifted closer, forming clouds, and within those clouds, knots of matter grew denser, warmer, and heavier. Across millions of years, the universe's great emptiness began to stir again. The first stars were forming. Deep within collapsing clouds of gas, pressure and heat reached astonishing levels. The atoms fused together, hydrogen becoming helium in a blaze of nuclear fire. And then, in the black ocean of space, the first stars ignited. Brilliant points of light scattering across the void like embers blown from an unseen flame. The universe had created light again, but this time, it came from within. The first stars were enormous, hundreds of times more massive than our sun. They burned fiercely and lived briefly. Their lives measured not in billions of years, but in millions. Yet in their short existence they performed miracles. Inside their blazing hearts heavier elements were born: carbon, oxygen, nitrogen, iron, the raw materials of everything that would ever live. When these giant stars died, they died spectacularly. In titanic supernovae, they scattered their enriched contents across space, seeding the cosmos with new possibilities. Out of their ashes, new generations of stars were born, smaller, gentler, longer-lived. Around them, planets began to form, built from the debris of earlier worlds. Each generation of stars carried the memory of the universe's beginning, passing down the elements of life like a sacred inheritance. The cosmos was no longer just expanding. It was evolving. It had gone from chaos to order, from energy to matter, from simplicity to beauty. Somewhere in this grand process, about 9 billion years after the Big Bang, a quiet corner of the Milky Way began to glow with new stars. One of them, modest and yellow, would come to host a small rocky planet. On that planet, billions of years later, a creature would look up at the night sky and wonder where it all began, unaware that the atoms in its body had been forged in the heart of ancient stars. It is a poetic truth that the same hydrogen atoms that formed in the first minutes after the Big Bang still exist inside you today. The breath you take, the water you drink, the light that warms your skin, all of it is part of that first expansion. You are not separate from the universe's beginning. You are its continuation. The Big Bang is not just history. It is happening still, in every movement of your body, every flicker of your thoughts. Consider the strangeness of this. The laws that shaped the galaxies also shaped your neurons. The same balance that holds atoms together allows you to hold a thought, to feel wonder, to ask why. When you gaze into the night sky, you are not looking outward but backward in time, seeing the light that began its journey long before Earth even existed. The universe is vast, but it is also intimate because everything within it shares a single origin. Science tells us how it happened. Philosophy helps us ask what it means. Perhaps the most astonishing thing about the Big Bang is not that the universe began, but that it remembers. Every particle, every photon, carries a trace of that first moment, an echo of the universe's birth. And within us that memory becomes awareness. We do not just exist in the universe. The universe exists through us, thinking, seeing, reflecting upon itself. In that way, the Big Bang was not just the start of matter and energy, it was the beginning of meaning. A single moment gave rise to everything that could ever ask, why? 13.8 billion years later, the universe is still expanding, still cooling, still stretching outward into unknown space. Galaxies drift apart, stars live and die, and time flows forward. Yet the pulse of creation continues. Every sunrise, every heartbeat, every flicker of life is a small echo of that original unfolding. It is peaceful to think that everything began in silence, and will likely end in silence. Between those two infinities, known the nothing before and the nothing after, lies the luminous breath we call existence. The Big Bang is not merely an event at the start of time. It is the eternal rhythm of being, the endless becoming of the cosmos. If you close your eyes now, you might imagine it. The first shimmer of energy, the gentle expansion of space, the slow birth of light. The universe beginning not in violence but in awakening, the moment when nothing became everything, when potential became presence, when the cosmos took its first miraculous breath. And though billions of years have passed, that breath still flows through you. Every atom in your body carries the signature of that beginning. You are the continuation of the universe's story, stardust thinking about the stars, matter becoming aware of itself. From nothing came energy. From energy came light. From light came matter. And from matter came life and wonder and you. The universe took its first breath, and it has never stopped breathing since. After the long darkness that followed the universe's first light, the cosmos rested in silence. Hydrogen and helium drifted through space like invisible mist, filling the vastness with quiet anticipation. There were no stars yet, no warmth, only the faint afterglow of the Big Bang fading into chill emptiness. The universe had cooled enough to breathe, but not yet enough to shine. In this endless night, gravity waited. It had been present since the first instant, patient and persistent, shaping everything in ways too subtle to see. Wherever the early universe was slightly denser, where the invisible fog of atoms clumped just a little more tightly, gravity began to draw matter together. Over millions of years, these ripples grew, feeding on themselves, gathering mass, pulling more and more gas into their invisible arms. Imagine that darkness, vast beyond comprehension, silent beyond sound. Through that infinite black ocean, clouds of hydrogen swelled and condensed, swirling ever so slowly, drawn toward centers that grew heavier with every passing million years. Within these gathering clouds, motion built upon motion, the first whispers of order in the sea of chaos. As these clouds collapsed, pressure began to rise. At first, the change was imperceptible. The universe was young, and time itself moved with a rhythm slower than thought. But gravity is relentless. The gas drew tighter, atoms collided more frequently, and in the densest hearts of these clouds something extraordinary happened. Heat began to bloom. The collapsing hydrogen, compressed under its own weight, began to glow faintly from the inside, like the deep ember of a sleeping fire. It was a prelude to brilliance. When the temperature reached millions of degrees, hydrogen atoms could no longer resist fusion. Their nuclei collided and merged, releasing torrents of energy. In that instant, the darkness of the early universe was broken. The first stars were born. They ignited in silence, scattering light across the blackness. One by one they flared into existence, tiny, bright islands in an endless sea. The cosmic night was over. For the first time since the beginning, the universe had light again. Not the blinding afterglow of the Big Bang, but the soft, steady radiance of starlight. These first stars, known today as population 3 stars, were unlike any that came after. They were immense, far larger than our sun, giants hundreds of times its mass. Their lives burned fast and furious, their cores raging with nuclear fire. There was no trace of heavier elements within them. They were pure hydrogen and helium, untouched by the metals that would later color the universe. In their brilliance, they began to create those very elements, forging complexity from simplicity, order from fire. Deep in their hearts, atoms fused and transformed. Hydrogen became helium, helium became carbon, oxygen, silicon, and finally iron, the heaviest element a star could make before it could no longer sustain its fire. Each reaction released energy, the same energy that now spilled out as light, illuminating the void. Imagine that glow. 1,000,000 suns lighting a sky that had known only darkness. It was a light no eyes could yet see, but its beauty was absolute. The first stars filled the universe with radiance and heat, reshaping the cosmic fog that surrounded them. Their light streamed outward, scattering electrons, tearing apart atoms, clearing the mists of the ancient night. This era would come to be called the Cosmic Dawn, the awakening of light in a universe that had slept for hundreds of millions of years. The light of those first stars began to transform everything. Around them, their fierce radiation carved bubbles of clarity in the darkness like lanterns glowing in a fog. Their winds of energy pushed gas away, sculpting the interstellar medium into delicate, lacy structures. Matter collected along invisible filaments of gravity, forming great threads that stretched across space. The first cosmic architecture began to take shape. But beauty in the cosmos has always been bound to impermanence. These giant stars lived short, furious lives, only a few million years, a breath compared to the long age of the universe. When their fuel ran out, they collapsed in on themselves. Gravity crushed them until in an instant their outer layers were hurled outward in titanic explosions. Supernovae so bright, they outshone entire galaxies. In those deaths, creation continued. The violence of their end scattered newly forged elements into the cosmos. Carbon for future life, oxygen for future air, iron for the cores of future worlds. Every bit of material that now makes up your body, every drop of water, every grain of dust was once part of those dying stars. The iron in your blood, the calcium in your bones, the oxygen you breathe, all born in the heat of their final moments. Each explosion sent shock waves through the surrounding gas, compressing it, stirring it, triggering the birth of new stars. From the ashes of one generation rose another. Slowly, the universe began to fill with constellations of light, clusters of stars held together by gravity, forming the first primitive galaxies. These galaxies were small at first, irregular, their shapes chaotic. They drifted through the expanding universe, merging, colliding, growing ever larger. Over billions of years, they evolved into the vast, spiraling structures we see today. Among them was one modest spiral that formed in a quiet corner of the cosmos. A galaxy that would one day cradle a small yellow star, and around it a world called Earth. This was the Milky Way's beginning. Born from the merging of ancient clouds and star clusters, forged in countless generations of stellar births and deaths. Every star you see when you look up at the night sky is part of this lineage, a descendant of those first lights that pierced the ancient darkness. Between the galaxies stretched immense voids, regions so empty that a single atom might drift for light years before meeting another. Yet even there, gravity held its silent sway, weaving invisible threads of connection across unimaginable distances. The cosmic web, a vast lattice of galaxies and dark matter, grew and expanded, shaping the universe's grand design. As the first galaxies matured, new generations of stars emerged with heavier elements, the gifts of their ancestors. These stars could form planets, rocky worlds where carbon and oxygen could bond into the complex molecules of life. The chemistry of existence had begun. But long before life would ever breathe, the universe continued to grow and change in ways both violent and delicate. At the centers of many galaxies, matter collapsed so completely that not even light could escape. The first black holes were born. Some were small, the remnants of dead stars. Others grew monstrous, feeding on gas and stars until they became millions of times the mass of our sun. These supermassive black holes became the hearts of galaxies, shaping their growth with invisible power. From the death of stars came the structure of the universe. From collapse came balance. From destruction came creation. It is easy to think of the cosmos as chaos, but it is a chaos that breathes rhythm. The same forces that tore stars apart also gathered their ashes into new ones. Energy and matter cycled endlessly, turning darkness into light and light into the seeds of new worlds. Imagine now standing, if one could stand, within that early universe. The sky above would not yet hold familiar constellations. Instead, it would shimmer with young galaxies, each one glowing faintly in a sea of black. Rivers of gas would stretch between them, forming a vast network of light. If you could look long enough, you would see stars forming in bursts, entire regions flickering alive and fading again as new generations replaced the old. The scale defies comprehension. Each galaxy contained billions of stars, and each star released energy enough to sustain life for eons. And yet all of it, all that brilliance, came from the simplest beginning. From hydrogen atoms born in the first minutes of time. As the eons unfolded, the universe continued its transformation. The first stars had long perished, their light traveling across billions of light years, still reaching us today. Their galaxies grew more intricate. Spiral arms formed, drawn by rotation, curving gracefully around their centers like cosmic whirlpools. Dust from ancient supernovae settled into dense clouds, and within those clouds new stars began to glow. The universe was no longer young, but it was still learning to create. Within these galaxies, chemistry became more complex. Carbon, oxygen, nitrogen, and iron mixed and mingled in cosmic clouds, forming the first molecules: water, methane, ammonia. The simple foundations of life. The universe had begun to write a new chapter, one that would someday lead to consciousness. But at this point it was only beginning to compose the alphabet, and still gravity worked. Slowly and visibly it drew galaxies together, forming clusters and superclusters, cities of stars bound across space. The grand design continued to unfold, guided by nothing but the laws written in that first instant of the Big Bang. When we look at the night sky today, every star we see is a descendant of those first ones. Their light is an echo of the universe's awakening, a continuation of the same flame that once burned in the hearts of giants. To look at a star is to look back in time, through layers of creation, all the way to the cosmic dawn. It's humbling to remember that the atoms in your body are older than the earth, older than the sun. They were born in stars that lived and died billions of years before our solar system formed. You are quite literally a collection of ancient stardust, arranged for a brief moment into a thinking form. The universe built you from the remnants of its own story. And perhaps that is what makes the cosmos so profoundly beautiful, that every end becomes a beginning. A star's death is not its final word. It is its transformation into everything that comes after. Its ashes become planets. Its light becomes life. Its memory becomes wonder. Billions of years after the first stars burned out, their legacy still glows in the sky. The galaxies they helped shape continue to spin, each filled with new generations of stars, each one carrying the flame forward. The Milky Way, our home, is just one of countless such galaxies. A single swirl of light in a universe filled with billions upon billions more. And though we live within it, it is easy to forget that we are part of the same process. The iron coursing through your blood once shone at the center of a massive star. The calcium in your bones was forged in its last breath. The oxygen you breathe was born in the fusion that ended that star's life. Every heartbeat, every thought is powered by the same forces that shaped the galaxies. The cosmic dawn never truly ended. The light that began with those first stars still travels, still illuminates, still defines the shape of everything. The photons released then continue to move outward, some reaching our telescopes today, faint whispers from the beginning of time. To study them is to listen to the universe remembering its childhood. And when we gaze at those distant galaxies, tiny red-shifted smudges of light billions of light years away, we are not just observing the past. We are witnessing our own origin. We are seeing the stars that made us possible, burning their short, brilliant lives so that we might exist to see them. If the universe has a story, it is one of transformation. Hydrogen became stars. Stars became galaxies. Galaxies became the cradle of worlds. And from those worlds, awareness arose. The ability to look back, to wonder, to dream. In that sense, the cosmic dawn never truly faded. Its light continues in us, in our thoughts, our imagination, our curiosity. The same energy that first burned in the darkness now burns as understanding, as consciousness, as awe. Every atom in your body, every particle that makes you real, was once part of a star that lived and died long before Earth existed. You are not just in the universe. You are the universe made conscious, reflecting on itself. The stars still burn, the galaxies still spin, the light still travels. The story continues, written in fire and silence. The cosmic dawn was not only the birth of stars, it was the birth of memory, the beginning of the universe's long journey toward awareness. And in every breath you take, in every moment you look up and see the night sky, you are breathing the legacy of that dawn. You are the continuation of its light. Every atom in your body was once inside a star, and every star, in its own way, still shines within you. In the long history of the cosmos, there came a time when a cloud of dust began to dream of becoming a world. Around a young star, a newborn sun blazing with golden light, countless grains of rock and ice drifted in orbit, remnants of older stars that had lived and died long before. The solar system was not yet a system at all, but a vast swirling disk of chaos and promise, a storm of creation encircling a bright, young heart. The sun was fierce then, radiant and volatile, its surface boiling with storms of fire. Its light reached out across the cosmic sea, illuminating the particles that circled it. Gravity began to pull those grains together, weaving them into clumps that collided and shattered, collided again, and slowly grew larger. It was a slow dance, one that took millions of years. A dance of destruction and creation repeated endlessly. Every impact released energy, heating the dust until it melted and fused. Small fragments became stones, stones became boulders, and boulders became worlds in miniature. Planetesimals, the building blocks of planets. They spiraled around the sun in vast numbers, their orbits crossing, their paths colliding. The early solar system was violent and crowded, a cosmic battleground where gravity decided the future of everything. Amid this swirling storm, one of those growing worlds began to gather more than the rest. With every collision, it gained mass and gravity, drawing in more debris, pulling it closer, feeding on the chaos. Slowly it grew round, not by choice but because gravity prefers harmony, pulling unevenness into balance. The young Earth was born from fire. Its surface glowed red with molten rock. Rivers of lava flowed like liquid glass. Oceans of magma shimmered beneath a poisonous sky. The air was thick with gases, carbon dioxide, nitrogen, sulfur, a suffocating veil that trapped heat and light. No green, no blue, no sign of life, only the restless motion of a newborn planet trying to find equilibrium. Above it all, the sun raged. Solar winds blasted through space, sweeping away lighter gases, sculpting the early atmosphere. Yet even amid this turmoil, Earth held its ground. It spun steadily, wrapped in its molten skin, waiting for the violence to calm. Then catastrophe and destiny struck. A wandering body, roughly the size of Mars, crossed Earth's path. In the slow ballet of cosmic motion, the two worlds met. The collision was unimaginably powerful, melting both planets in an instant. The impact tore away a massive plume of rock and vapor that shot into space, glowing with heat. For a time, Earth was split apart, its surface stripped bare, its shape nearly undone. But gravity, ever patient, began to pull the debris back together. What remained of the smaller body merged with Earth's core, making it richer in heavy elements, while the ejected material gathered into a glowing ring that encircled the wounded planet. In the darkness that followed, that ring began to coalesce. Over countless nights it drew itself into a sphere, our moon. The moon's birth brought balance. Its presence steadied Earth's spin, softened the chaos of its rotation, and began to draw the tides that would someday cradle life. In its silvery light, the newborn planet cooled. For millions of years, the Earth remained a world of fire. Volcanoes broke through its crust, spilling oceans of lava. Asteroids rained from space, striking with thunderous force, heating the air, vaporizing stone. Yet slowly, through this violence, something miraculous began to happen. Steam rose from the cooling surface. The molten seas hardened into crust. The gases that escaped from volcanoes, water vapor, carbon dioxide, nitrogen, gathered above, forming a dense, cloudy sky. Rain began to fall. At first it evaporated instantly, the ground too hot to hold it. But the storms continued, endless and patient. The planet cooled drop by drop. Eventually the rain remained. It fell in torrents for centuries, filling the lowlands, carving valleys into the young rock. Oceans formed, vast and deep, shimmering beneath a red-orange sky. Lightning crackled across the clouds, and with each strike, energy coursed through the waters below, stirring the ingredients of chemistry. The Earth's first oceans were not the calm blue we know today. They were dark, filled with minerals leached from the rocks, heated by the vents of volcanoes that dotted the ocean floor. In their depths, water met stone and fire, and chemistry began to experiment with possibility. From simple molecules came complexity. Carbon, hydrogen, nitrogen, oxygen, the elements once forged in dying stars, met and bonded, broke apart, and joined again in countless combinations. They formed amino acids, lipids, sugar, the building blocks of life. No one was watching, no one was guiding. The universe simply followed its own laws. Where energy and matter met under the right conditions, patterns emerged. Some of those patterns could copy themselves, and once replication began, evolution began with it. Somewhere, in a shallow pool or a deep-sea vent, a tiny structure formed. A fragile bubble of molecules that could store energy, protect itself, and make imperfect copies of its own design. These copies would change, adapt, compete, and evolve. From this humble beginning, life began. It was not sudden. It was not loud. It was persistence itself, slow and invisible. For millions of years, these first living systems floated in the ancient seas. feeding on the energy of the Earth's warmth and the chemistry of the deep. They grew more complex, learning and without knowing how to survive. The world above them changed as they did. Volcanoes continued to reshape the continents. The atmosphere thickened and thinned. Comets from the outer solar system brought more water, more carbon compounds enriching the oceans. Each impact might have destroyed what life had begun, but each also added new ingredients. Creation and destruction danced again, and still the first cells endured. They learned to harness energy more efficiently. Some found ways to capture sunlight, storing its power in chemical bonds. Photosynthesis, the transformation of light into life, had begun. Slowly, these tiny architects began to change the atmosphere, releasing oxygen into the air. At first, it was a poison. For most early life, oxygen was deadly, but some adapted. They found ways to use this new element to release energy, to grow stronger, faster. The world shifted again. Beneath the surface, the crust of the planet moved as well. The continents drifted, colliding, breaking apart, reshaping the face of the Earth. Mountains rose and were worn down. Volcanoes breathed gases into the sky. The cycle of water and rock began. Evaporation, rain, rivers, oceans, a living system of motion and renewal. It is easy looking back to see purpose in it all, to imagine a plan. But the truth is more beautiful. There was no plan. Only the quiet unfolding of natural law, the patient work of time. Every event, from the collision that made the moon to the raindrop that cooled a volcanic plain, was part of the same great process, the universe learning to create complexity. As the Earth settled into its rhythm, sunlight filtered through thinner clouds, casting gold across the oceans. The moon circled above, pulling tides across the shorelines. The air shimmered with lightning. Beneath the surface, in darkness and warmth, molecules continued their ancient experiment. Life became more resilient. It found niches everywhere, in the boiling waters of vents, in the shadows of rocks, in the open sea. Each generation of cells carried the memory of the ones before, encoded in strands of molecules that could copy themselves with precision. DNA had arrived, the language of life written in chemical code. From these small beginnings, all future life would come, trees, animals, humans, all descendants of those first self-replicating systems that formed in the quiet oceans of a young Earth. The planet, that had once been molten and lifeless, had become a cradle. Its crust cooled into continents, its oceans deepened and calmed. The air thickened with water vapor, clouds, and the first whispers of oxygen. The cycle of day and night began to regulate the rhythms of its seas. It was no longer just a planet of rock and fire. It had become a living world. And yet this transformation did not happen in an instant. The passage from chemistry to biology was a story written over hundreds of millions of years. Each moment built upon the last, guided not by will but by the quiet persistence of possibility. Imagine that time. The continents bare, the sky a deep copper hue, the air thick and heavy, lightning flickers in the distance. The sea bubbles near volcanic vents, and within those bubbles, unseen and unnoticed, life stirs. The first cells divide. They float upward, carried by currents. Sunlight touches them. The cycle continues, life feeding on energy, reproducing, changing. The world slowly awakens. As eons passed, the planet cooled further. The moon moved slightly farther away, its tide slower, its pull gentler. The sun aged and stabilized, its light softening to a steady golden glow. Earth had found balance in a fragile, shifting harmony that would endure for billions of years. Volcanoes still erupted. Asteroids still fell. The sky still changed. But life adapted, clinging to the thin line between creation and destruction. It learned resilience, for Earth demanded it. And through this long evolution, something profound was happening. The planet was beginning to shape itself. Life interacted with rock, air, and water, changing the chemistry of the oceans, the texture of the atmosphere. The Earth became not just a home for life, but a system alive with it. Every element connected, every process intertwined. The clouds carried the ocean's breath. The rivers carved the memory of rain. The wind carried dust that would one day nourish forests. The whole planet became a cycle, one vast, living organism made of many smaller ones. All of it began from dust, from the same stardust that once drifted in the aftermath of dying suns. The story of Earth is the story of transformation. From chaos to order, from fire to water, from chemistry to consciousness, and at each step it moved quietly, guided by the same laws that govern every star and every atom. When you stand today on solid ground beneath a sky lit by the sun, you are standing on the product of billions of years of evolution, not just of life but of matter itself. The atoms in the soil beneath your feet were forged in ancient stars. The water in your body once fell as rain on a molten plain. The air you breathe was exhaled by unseen ancestors of ancient seas. It is all one story. The universe telling itself through time, through transformation, through endless renewal. The Earth, once molten, now green, once silent, now alive, once barren, now home, and through it all, the quiet persistence of life, small, fragile, yet unstoppable, continues its work, reshaping a world born from fire into a sanctuary among the stars. The oceans still move to the rhythm of the moon. Volcanoes still breathe heat from the planet's heart. Storms still carve the face of continents. The processes that began billions of years ago have never truly stopped. They have simply changed their form. We live within that change. Every mountain, every tree, every living thing is part of that same unfolding. The Earth does not remember its beginning, but we do. We can look up at the sky, see the sun that once gave it birth, and know that we are part of the same cosmic dance, the same dust, the same energy, the same endless story. Life began not with noise, but with quiet persistence, and it continues, even now carried forward by the same calm, patient forces that once turned dust into a world and light into life. In the ancient oceans of a cooling world, life had already begun its slow and silent work. For billions of years it remained simple, invisible to the naked eye, fragile and patient. Tiny cells floated in the vast waters, multiplying, dividing, and drifting with the tides. They lived by the rhythm of sunlight and chemistry, each one carrying within it the memory of creation. The Earth was still young, and yet life had already learned its most important lesson: persistence. These first cells were small and unremarkable, but they were innovators in ways that would shape everything to come. Some learned to draw energy from sunlight, transforming the power of the sun into food through photosynthesis. With each breathless cycle, they released oxygen into the water and sky. At first it was a poison to most of their kind, but as the centuries passed, others adapted. The poison became power, and oxygen began to change the face of the planet. The oceans turned blue. The sky lightened. Iron dissolved into rust and settled on the sea floor. Slowly the air thickened with a new breath, the atmosphere we would one day inherit. Life had rewritten the chemistry of its world. Still it remained microscopic, hidden in the quiet folds of the sea. For more than 2 billion years, the Earth's living inhabitants were nothing more than single cells. Bacteria, archaea, and simple algae. They drifted through the waters, dividing endlessly, weaving invisible webs of interaction. They competed, they cooperated, they exchanged genes, learning through trial and error the art of survival. In this long age of simplicity, one event changed everything. Some cells began to live together. At first it was convenience, small clusters sharing resources, protecting one another from the hostile environment. But then something new occurred. Instead of simply clustering, they began to specialize. Some cells handled energy, others movement, others defense. Cooperation turned into integration. The first multicellular organisms had arrived. It was a quiet revolution. No sudden transformation marked the moment. No clear line divides the single from the many. But over time, the change became profound. Now life could grow larger. It could take new forms, explore new strategies. The Earth itself seemed to respond. Continents shifted, climates changed, and the oceans deepened. The air grew richer in oxygen, feeding the fires of metabolism. With more energy available, living forms diversified. Tissues formed. Organs appeared. Shapes became stranger, more intricate. Then, about 540 million years ago, the world erupted in creativity. In the deep seas, in the dark sediment where life had long been hidden, evolution discovered an explosion of form and function. Within a geological blink of an eye, creatures appeared in astonishing variety. The Cambrian explosion had begun. From the mud rose trilobites armored like tiny tanks, their segmented bodies gliding across the sea floor. Worms wriggled through the sand, burrowing and filtering nutrients. Soft-bodied creatures floated like ribbons. Jellyfish pulsed through the waters, their translucent bells shimmering in the dim light. And in the shadows, the first predators emerged. Creatures with eyes, claws, and purpose. The seas became alive with motion. Sight had been born, and with it fear and awareness. No longer was life a passive drift. It had become a dance of hunter and prey. Each adaptation inspired another. Armor led to sharper teeth. Speed led to camouflage. Complexity begot more complexity. Evolution had found momentum. The oceans teemed with shapes beyond imagination. Spiny, coiled, shelled, and scaled. Some had hard exoskeletons. Others swam with fins or undulating bodies. The world's first ecosystems took form. Intricate networks of energy and exchange, where each life depended on another. For tens of millions of years, this drama unfolded beneath the waves. The continents above were barren, lifeless plains of rock and dust. The only green was in the shallow edges of the sea where algae clung to sunlight. But slowly, inevitably, life began to reach outward. Plants were the first pioneers. Simple photosynthetic organisms once confined to the oceans crept onto wet rocks near the shore. They clung to moisture, absorbing nutrients from the air and earth. Over time, they adapted to dryness, forming structures to retain water, to grow upright, to spread their spores. The land began to turn green. With plants came transformation. Their roots broke down rock into soil. Their leaves released oxygen into the air. Rain fell, rivers flowed, and a new kind of ecosystem began to form. One not of water but of earth. Insects followed, crawling from the shallows, small and delicate. They fed on the new vegetation and carried its spores farther inland. And behind them, something stirred in the water. Animals watching, waiting. Fish had evolved in the oceans, their bodies sleek, their movements graceful. Fins became more refined, eyes sharper. Some grew bony skeletons. Others remained cartilaginous and supple. Sharks ruled as ancient kings of the sea, silent and efficient. But some fish began to linger near the edges where water met air. Their fins pressed against the muddy bottom. Their lungs, once only auxiliary, and began to strengthen. They gulped air, adapted to light, and learned to bear their weight. One day a fin became a limb. It was not sudden, but it was revolutionary. With each generation, the boundary between sea and land grew thinner. The first amphibians emerged, half swimmers, half walkers, exploring the world beyond the water's edge. They were clumsy and slow, but they carried with them the most profound heritage, the ability to move from one realm to another. The earth, once ruled only by water, now had creatures that breathed air. Forests spread across the continents, ferns and mosses and towering trees creating vast jungles of green. Insects buzzed between leaves. Amphibians croaked in shadowed pools. The soundscape of life had begun. Time continued its endless march. From amphibians came reptiles, stronger, more resilient, no longer tied to water for survival. They laid eggs that could withstand the air, their bodies armored against the elements. They spread across the land, conquering deserts, forests, and plains. Some grew massive, their scales glinting in the sunlight. Others remained small, nimble, and quick. The age of reptiles dawned, and with it, the world changed again. Dinosaurs rose from this lineage, becoming giants that ruled the earth for over 150 million years. They filled every niche: predators, grazers, flyers. Some thundered across plains, others soared above in the skies, wings stretched like sails. The land trembled under their steps and the air vibrated with their calls. Beneath their reign, mammals remained small and nocturnal, hiding in burrows and shadows, waiting for their time. Evolution does not rush, and it waits, observing, adjusting. It keeps its secrets until the world is ready. Then, as always, the balance shifted. A catastrophe, sudden and immense, struck the earth. A meteor collided with the planet, igniting firestorms and shrouding the sky in darkness. The great reptiles, lords of land and air, fell silent. The world cooled, forests burned, oceans changed, and in the ashes of that extinction, life began again. Mammals emerged into the spaces left behind. They grew larger, smarter, more adaptable. They nurtured their young, formed groups and explored the world with cautious curiosity. The diversity of life flourished once more. Birds filled the skies, insects hummed through fields, and plants evolved flowers to attract them. The cycle of cooperation deepened. On one small continent, a line of primates appeared. They were agile, curious, social. They lived among trees, then gradually descended to the open plains, walking upright under the sun. Their hands became tools of creation, their minds tools of imagination. The story of life had reached a new chapter, one not only of survival, but of awareness. These early humans were still animals, but within them burned something unique, the ability to remember, to plan, to dream. They looked at the world and saw not only what it was, but what it could be. Fire, once feared, became their ally. Stone became art and weapon. Speech arose, coined the first shaping of thought into sound. Life, once a single cell adrift in an ocean, now looked upon the stars and wondered. Evolution had written its masterpiece. Not in haste, but through eons of patient experimentation. From the silent chemistry of the early Earth to the hum of a living world filled with consciousness, every step had been part of a continuum, the universe learning to see itself, and even now the process continues. Evolution does not end, it only transforms. Humanity, for all its intelligence and ambition, remains a part of the same living thread that began in the deep seas of ancient Earth. Every cell in your body carries the same molecules that once floated in primordial oceans. Every heartbeat echoes the pulse of life's first divisions. You are the descendant of those first single-celled beings, of the creatures of the Cambrian seas, of the fish that walked on land, of the mammals that survived the fires of extinction. When you breathe the air shaped by ancient plants. When you move, your muscles carry the legacy of creatures that first swam. When you think, your mind continues the story that began when awareness first flickered in the ocean depths. The rise of life is not a straight line. It is a web, vast and interconnected, woven from countless generations of struggle, adaptation, and chance. Each extinction gives rise to renewal. Each failure leads to innovation. It is a process without end, guided by no plan yet rich with meaning. If you listen closely in the stillness of night and the rhythm of your own pulse, You can hear that story continuing. The whisper of the wind through trees is the echo of ancient forests. The song of a bird is the distant descendant of reptilian cries. The spark of curiosity in your thoughts is the same force that once drove a single cell to divide, to change, to endure. All life, past and present, shares this inheritance. From the tiniest microbe to the grandest whale, from the crawling insect to the thinking human, all are threads of one great tapestry. The ocean still carries the memory of the first breath. The land still holds the fossils of forgotten ages. The stars above still shine with the same light that once nourished the first living things. And through it all, the story continues, calm and slow, silent and infinite, from cells to creatures, from creatures to minds. Life has risen not through conquest, but through cooperation, through adaptation, through the endless persistence of change. It began in darkness. It continues in light, from single cells to sentient beings. The universe has written and continues to write its masterpiece, and one that is not yet finished, one that includes us, and everything still to come. In the long unfolding story of the universe, there came a moment when Stardust began to think. It was not sudden, not an explosion of awareness, but a gradual dawning, like sunlight creeping across the horizon after a long night. Somewhere on a small blue world, after 4.5 billion years of transformation, a new kind of creature opened its eyes and saw the world not just as a place to live, but as a mystery to be understood. The Earth had already known countless forms of life, forests that breathed, oceans alive with movement, plains thundered by herds and hunters. But in this last chapter of creation, something different appeared. Beings who could imagine things that did not yet exist. They could shape stone and story, fire and future. They could remember the past and dream of tomorrow. 200,000 years ago, in the heart of Africa, the first humans stood beneath the open sky. Their bodies were unremarkable, fragile, hairless, vulnerable to the cold. But within their skulls burned a spark no other creature had known. Consciousness, a mind capable of reflection. The same atoms that once fused in stars now contemplated the stars themselves. At first we were wanderers. Small bands of people moved through the savannas and forests, following herds, tracking the seasons. We lived by the rhythm of nature, by sun, by rain, by the flight of birds and the growth of grass. Our tools were simple, our shelters made of branches and stone, yet our minds were filled with fire. Around campfires we began to tell stories. We painted the walls of caves with colors drawn from the earth, ochre, charcoal, clay. We painted bison, mammoths, and spirits. Those images were more than art. They were memory, prayer, and knowledge woven together. Each handprint pressed into stone was a declaration. We are here. In those early nights, under skies untouched by pollution or city light, the stars were endless. People looked up and wondered what they were. Holes in a great dark dome, eyes of ancestors or fires of distant gods. No one could know, but the wondering itself was enough. For the first time in the history of the universe, something within it asked why. We learned to speak, to share what we saw, to teach what we knew. Language became our greatest invention, invisible but more powerful than any weapon. With it we passed down experience, hope, and warning. A single idea could travel through generations, outliving the body that first conceived it. Through words, humanity became immortal in memory. As time went on, we grew restless. Curiosity pushed us beyond the horizon. From Africa, our ancestors spread across the continents, facing cold and heat, building shelters, making fire, learning the ways of every landscape. We crossed mountains and rivers, tundra and desert, guided by instinct and the stars. In each place we settled, we changed, and the world changed with us. We tamed the wild, domesticated animals and learned to sow seeds in the soil. The first farms appeared, the first villages. The rhythm of life shifted from the wandering of hunters to the patience of farmers. The earth began to fill with the evidence of human hands, fields, tools, walls, pottery. What had once been wilderness now carried the marks of purpose. The planet itself began to remember us. From villages grew cities, and from cities, civilizations. We built temples to the sky, carved mountains into monuments, and wrote our stories on clay and stone so they might outlast our voices. In Mesopotamia, Egypt, India, China, and the Americas, humanity's many branches bloomed. We studied the stars to mark the seasons, measured the flow of rivers, counted the days and moons. We built mathematics to understand what we saw, philosophy to ask what we could not. We wrote poetry to fill the silence between them. The human mind, once preoccupied with survival, had begun to explore the invisible. We imagined gods and heavens, justice and love, beginnings and endings. We wondered not only what we were, but why we were. The cosmos, through our thoughts, was beginning to reflect upon itself. But progress came with weight. As our numbers grew, so did our hunger for land, for resources, for power. We built armies, fought wars, drew borders on a planet that had none. Our tools, once made to hunt or carve, became weapons. We could now take life as easily as we created it. Still, even amid destruction, creation continued. We built roads, ships, and machines. We explored art, music, and architecture. We looked inward and outward, mapping the human heart as carefully as we mapped the stars. In Greece, thinkers asked what the world was made of. In India, sages pondered the nature of consciousness. In China, scholars wrote of harmony between humanity and nature. Across the continents, different cultures gazed at the same sky and saw meaning reflected back in countless ways. As centuries passed, our inventions multiplied. Bronze gave way to iron. Stone tools became steel. We built cities that touched the clouds, ships that crossed oceans. The earth began to shrink beneath our feet, no longer an endless wilderness but a shared home. We learned to harness wind and water, then fire and metal. The industrial age dawned, a new kind of fire born not from wood or lightning but from the deep memory of the earth itself. We dug coal, oil, and gas from ancient layers of rock, the buried remains of life that had once breathed in forgotten swamps. We burned it, and with it we released the stored sunlight of millions of years. The world changed faster than ever. Steam-powered engines, engines powered factories, and factories powered empires. Cities grew louder, skies darker, rivers dirtier. The same intelligence that painted caves and dreamed of gods now reshaped the planet's surface in a fraction of geological time. We reached heights of knowledge and depths of destruction. We split the atom and released the energy that once powered the stars. We sent signals through the air, voices across oceans, and soon images through wires. The human mind, once bound to its immediate surroundings, could now see and hear the world in its entirety. And still, our gaze turned upward. The stars that once inspired myths now became destinations. We built telescopes to see farther, rockets to rise higher. We stepped onto the moon, the same moon that watched over our ancestors' fires and left footprints that may last longer than any city. We sent machines to other planets, probes to the edges of our solar system, whispers of data that continue to drift through interstellar space. For the first time, the universe could observe itself from afar, a fragile world seen through the lens of its own creation. When the Voyager spacecraft turned its camera back toward Earth and captured the pale blue dot, humanity saw its true scale. A tiny speck of light suspended in the dark, all of history contained in a single pixel. That image changed something. It reminded us that every war, every kingdom, every joy and sorrow had unfolded on a dot smaller than a grain of sand. The Earth, cradle of life and thought, was both everything we had and a whisper among stars. And yet, that whisper could speak. Through us, the cosmos had found its voice. The atoms that once drifted in nebulae now wrote symphonies, built telescopes, and wondered about their own origins. Consciousness, and fragile, transient, and infinitely curious, had emerged from matter, and with it, the universe became aware of its own story. We began to understand that we are not apart from the universe but expressions of it. The same laws that guide the motion of galaxies guide the beating of our hearts. The same carbon forged in dying stars forms our bodies. The light that warms our skin once traveled millions of years from the core of the sun. Science became our new mythology, not replacing wonder but deepening it. We learned that the Earth orbits the sun, that the sun is one of billions in the Milky Way, and that our galaxy is one of trillions drifting through a cosmic ocean. Yet far from making life insignificant, this understanding revealed something profound. Consciousness itself is rare and precious, the universe's way of seeing its own beauty. We are the eyes of the cosmos, the voice of its curiosity, the hands through which it creates and destroys. And though we often forget, though we turn our powers to greed and division, though we pollute and fight and doubt, the truth remains. We are the universe made self-aware, still learning what that means. Now, in this brief moment of cosmic time, we find ourselves at a crossroads. The same intelligence that carried us from stone tools to starships holds the power to shape the future, or to end it. We can terraform worlds or ruin our own. We can connect every mind or divide them into silence. The choice belongs to the very consciousness that the cosmos has given itself through us. Perhaps that is the great experiment, whether awareness can coexist with wisdom, whether a species born of survival can learn to cherish what it has built. Yet even if humanity were to vanish, the universe would not lose what it has achieved through us. The awareness we have created, our art, our science, our questions, will remain etched into the record of time. Our signals already travel through the void, carrying greetings in dozens of languages encoded in light and sound, moving toward distant stars. Long after our cities fade, those messages will continue their journey like whispers from the dawn of intelligence. Maybe one day another mind will hear them. Maybe somewhere in the endless expanse, other beings will look upon their own sky and wonder if they, too, are part of something greater. But for now, we are here, on this world in this time, breathing the air shaped by ancient life, standing on ground forged from stars. When you look at your hands, you see atoms billions of years old. When you think, you are arranging patterns of matter into meaning. When you love, you are performing the most complex act in the known universe. Consciousness recognizing itself in another, the universe has unfolded for 13.8 billion years to make this moment possible. A fleeting instant where it can look back and see what it has become. The story of humanity is still the story of the cosmos, an echo of the first light, translated into thought, language, and song. We are the continuation of that first spark, carried forward through time, transformed into awareness. When the night is clear and the stars are visible, remember that the light reaching your eyes left its source before humans existed. Yet here you stand, able to see it, to know it, to feel wonder. That wonder itself is the proof that the universe is awake. The cosmos may be vast and cold, but through us it dreams. Through us it questions, it creates, it loves. Through us it feels we are not separate from it. We are its consciousness, its reflection, its moment of realization. From the dust of ancient stars, from the chemistry of life, from the long patience of evolution, the universe has arrived at a point where it can whisper to itself, through human thought, I am here. And though we may be fragile, brief and imperfect, that whisper carries across time. Every poem, Every equation, every act of kindness adds to the chorus of the cosmos recognizing itself. The story does not end with us. It never ends. New stars will form. New worlds will rise. Perhaps new minds will awaken in other corners of the universe. The light will continue passing from one form to another endlessly. But for now, in this small corner of space on this single pale planet, the universe has opened its eyes. You are part of that opening. You are the moment when matter looked at itself and saw meaning. You are the universe becoming aware. The universe is still unfolding. Every moment that passes, every breath you take, adds one more note to the quiet symphony of creation. The stars still burn, galaxies still spin, and time flows forward, carrying everything that has ever been into everything that will ever be. Yet even the stars, those ancient fires that have outlived continents and civilizations, will not last forever. Their brilliance, like ours, is borrowed from eternity. A light that flares for a while before it fades into the infinite night. Far from now, so far that human imagination struggles to grasp it, the universe will grow old. Stars will exhaust their fuel. Galaxies, once drawn together by gravity's embrace, will begin to drift apart into the widening dark. The Milky Way and Andromeda will merge into one vast silent swirl of stars. A last dance of light before the slow decline begins. And yet, even in that distant age, remnants of what once was, the elements forged in the hearts of stars, the memories preserved in the movement of matter, will remain. The story of the cosmos does not end. It changes form. The atoms that once burned with light will cool, and those that once lived will return to dust. But dust, as the universe has shown time and again, is never truly lost. It is the raw material of new beginnings. If you could see that far future, you would witness the long quieting of the night. Stars will fade one by one, leaving behind the glowing embers of white dwarfs, small dense cores that linger for billions of years. They will glow softly, like candles burning down to their final flicker. Then they too will cool, becoming dark, invisible remnants, black dwarfs, stones of silence floating through endless space. Even then, the universe will not be dead. There will still be motion, faint and patient. Atoms will continue to move. Particles will still dance their invisible dance, and gravity will still whisper its gentle pull across the void. But the vastness will deepen. The galaxies will separate, their light redshifted into darkness. The night sky that once dazzled our ancestors will fade into emptiness. There will be no more new stars, no more constellations, no more warm suns shining on worlds. The universe will become a sea of quiet and black holes, dead stars, drifting atoms, and cold radiation. And yet, in this slow twilight, there is still something beautiful. The universe, in its vast patience, will continue to exist. It will continue to be. It will not vanish. It will simply transform as it always has. Creation and dissolution are the same rhythm, two halves of the same cosmic breath. There may come a time unimaginably far away when even black holes will evaporate, their immense gravity releasing the last whispers of energy back into space. When that happens, the universe will enter a final stage, a thin mist of particles too diffuse to form anything new, too faint to ever shine. Time will stretch endlessly and existence will approach stillness. But perhaps stillness is not the end. Perhaps it is a new kind of beginning, a pause before another heartbeat. We cannot know. The universe, after all, is not a story written with an ending. It is a process, a continual becoming. It began once and it may begin again. In the deep silence of cosmic time, there may come another spark, a new Big Bang, another breath of creation, born from the ashes of the last. And in that new universe, new stars might form, new worlds might rise, and somewhere something like life might open its eyes and wonder who it is. And perhaps, in that distant age, they too will look up at their sky, and they too will ask, where did we come from? What are we made of? And in their questions, the memory of us and of you of this moment will live again. For memory is not just held in minds, it is held in matter, in motion, in the eternal rhythm of existence. But for now, we live in the golden age of light. The stars still burn, the galaxies still sing their silent songs. Life still moves upon this small blue world. The universe in this moment is alive. Through every leaf that reaches toward the sun, through every heart that beats, through every thought that wanders, the cosmos continues its story. You, sitting here breathing quietly, are part of that living universe. Every atom in your body was forged in stars that burned billions of years ago. The calcium in your bones, the iron in your blood, the carbon that builds your cells, all were made in the hearts of long-dead suns. You carry the memory of stars inside you. You are the living continuation of their fire. The universe, vast and indifferent as it may seem, is not separate from you. It flows through you, as light through a prism, refracting into experience, into thought, into love. You are the part of it that feels, the part that knows, the part that asks why. And though you are small, a single consciousness on a single planet in an infinite sea, that smallness is sacred. For in you the universe becomes aware of itself. You are its mirror, its dream, its fleeting yet infinite reflection. It took billions of years for the cosmos to create a mind capable of saying, I am. You are that result, the culmination of time, chance, and persistence. The story that began with the Big Bang has reached this moment, where you can listen, think, and feel awe. Think of everything that had to happen for this to be. The expansion of space, the birth and death of stars, the cooling of planets, the rise of oceans and life. Each event, each atom, each collision led in some quiet, patient way to now. To you sitting here existing, aware. The odds were so small they are almost impossible to measure. Yet here you are. Proof that the universe not only exists but experiences. When you look at the night sky, you are looking into time itself. The light you see left its source millions, sometimes billions of years ago. Some of those stars may no longer exist, yet their light still travels, crossing the emptiness, touching your eyes, telling you they once were. In that way, nothing truly dies. It changes, it fades, but it leaves something behind. So it is with us. Our lives, short as they are, add to the story. Every thought, every kindness, every discovery is another thread in the great tapestry of existence. We are temporary forms, yes, but the pattern we weave endures. Our art, our music, our laughters, even our grief, echo through generations, shaping the future in ways we cannot imagine. And as long as life exists, the story continues. Maybe one day humans will leave this world. We will sail beyond the solar system, carrying with us fragments of our home, the languages, the songs, the stories of Earth. We will plant our presence among the stars, just as life once planted its roots in the oceans. The dust that became us will once again scatter, spreading thought and memory through the cosmos. It is strange and beautiful to realize that the same forces that once built galaxies now shape human dreams. Gravity once pulled together the stars, and now it pulls us toward meaning, connection, creation. The same instinct that made matter form patterns makes us seek patterns in our lives. The story of the universe is not just one of expansion and decay. It is one of transformation. Energy becomes matter. Matter becomes life. Life becomes consciousness, and consciousness becomes story. You are both the observer and the observed, the teller and the tale. Even if the stars fade, the story remains, not in light or sound, but in the fact that it once happened. The universe once dreamed of itself, once knew itself, once loved through the minds of creatures like you. That will never be erased. Someday, perhaps, all that will be left of this world is a whisper in the background radiation, a faint signature in the cosmic memory. But even that whisper will carry the truth that the universe once was alive, once was aware, once was beautiful, and beauty, once realized, is eternal. As you listen now, as your body softens and your mind drifts, imagine the universe breathing with you, slow, endless, calm. Each breath you take mirrors the rhythm of expansion and contraction, creation and dissolution. You are part of that rhythm, a single wave in the great ocean of time. You are the stillness between stars. You are the echo of every heartbeat that has ever been. You are the moment the universe pauses to reflect. When you sleep, the atoms in your body will continue their quiet motion, the same as they have for billions of years. They will hum softly, vibrating with the memory of stars. They will wait, patient and eternal, for the next chapter. Because even as galaxies drift apart, even as time stretches and cools, the story will go on, not written in words or sound, but in existence itself. Every ending becomes a beginning. Every silence becomes potential. Every heartbeat is another verse in the song of everything. And maybe that is the truest immortality. Not to live forever, but to have been alive at all. To have looked at the stars and wondered. To have loved, to have lost, to have existed, to have carried the fire of creation within your fragile form, and to have known it. As you drift toward sleep, let that thought be your companion. The stars you see tonight are your ancestors. You are their continuation, their voice, their dream made flesh. You are made of stars, and stars never truly die. They simply change form. Their light becomes you. Their fire becomes your thought. And someday, long after your heartbeat has faded, that same light will still travel on, crossing the dark, carrying your existence within it, silent, steady, endless. So rest now. The universe will continue its story. The galaxies will spin, the stars will burn, the atoms will dance, and time will flow on. You are part of it, and forever and always. And when you wake again, remember every sunrise, every breath, every moment of wonder is the universe reminding you that it is still alive, still unfolding, still becoming, through you, through us, through everything. The story of everything continues, one heartbeat at a time. And though all things fade, nothing is truly lost, because the universe remembers, because you are made of stars, and stars never truly die.